Hey everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and it is early in the morning. I didn't record this late at night because the Oscars happened last night, and I was gonna get on quick and rush a video together, but I was like, you know what? I want to sit with it. I want to sleep with it and wake up and see if I feel as excited as I did when I went to bed, and I did because the Oscar ceremony this year was really good. I think this is one of those ceremonies that didn't have too many moments that really turned people off, but it also didn't have too many crowd pleasing moments, but it had enough. Crowd pleasing moments to where I think we'll remember this Oscars for certain moments, and we won't necessarily begrudge these Oscars for certain moments. I think it was a clean ceremony. It went by really quick. I want to talk first off about the runtime. It started 5 minutes late for I don't know why, what the reason was, but it also ended 5 minutes early, which I think is just so interesting because the Oscars traditionally go so over. Now, there were two winners that did not make speeches. Boy and the Heron didn't make a speech. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, Wes Anderson wasn't there to make a speech. And those are two of my biggest, like, bummer moments because, like, to see Hayao Miyazaki give a speech and to see Wes Anderson give a speech, it would have been a really special moment because Hayao Miyazaki hasn't won since, like, 2002. And Wes Anderson has not won at all. But I do get why they didn't come. They obviously don't live in America. So I was a little bummed about it, but really I think that their two omissions in terms of speeches meant that we only got 21 speeches, which means they had more time to focus on like giving the actual speeches time to breathe. I don't think anyone got played off today, and I think that was or last night. I think that was a really big strength of the show. And the way they presented these awards, yes, they omitted some clips. We didn't see clips of the acting, but we went back to the old school way of having five previous winners in the acting categories, kind of give a little homage, a little speech to each one of the nominees, which I thought was really cool. It really brought me back to that old school kind of 2000s esque Oscars vibe. And then, of course, we had the musical numbers, which I think were actually really solid this year, except for the Flamin' Hot song, which I just don't like, even though I thought the performance was fine. I think the other musical performances were really great. John Batiste on the piano, just singing his soul out, was amazing. Billie Eilish and Phineas singing together. I know a lot of people just say Billie Eilish, but Phineas is the other half of that duo, and that is a really powerful duo. It's really amazing to see them get their second Oscar. And then, of course, the Wajaje song for My People, that brilliant performance that just really kind of encompassed the spirit of what that film stands for and what we should be taking away from that film, and giving that film a spotlight because Killers of the Flower Moon didn't win any awards that night. And then I'm Just Ken, which we all knew was going to be great. But I was picturing like, oh, they're just going to kind of reenact the one from the movie and he's going to sing maybe a verse and that be it. But no, he went extreme Ryan Gosling. He dressed up in a much flashier outfit than we've seen, the pink kind of sparkly top with the cowboy hat, and the way they incorporate all the dancers and the way Ken or Ryan Gosling was interacting with the dancers, the part with the Kenergy where he's kind of swimming in the sea of Barbie heads, and then going into the crowd and letting Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie and America Ferrera and Emma Stone sing part of the song with him to end with Slash on the guitar. I mean, that is a movie moment, a musical moment, an Oscars moment that is going to go down in history, I think, really, because it was one of those moments that I don't think anyone in that crowd was disappointed. Even like Martin Scorsese was on his feet for that. And I think it's one of those things where when I look back at these Oscars, I do still think What Was I Made For is the better song in the movie, is the deserving winner. And it did win. And I'm very happy for them, for Phineas and Billy. But I think I'm Just Ken is the musical moment of the year, and I'm glad that it got its spotlight here at the Oscars. Also, because Barbie only won one award, but it felt like Barbie's presence was still there. Just like I said with Killers of the Flower Moon, it felt like Killers of the Flower Moon's presence because of the Wajaje song was still there. Because Emma Stone shouted out Lily Gladstone, it was still there. It felt like each film that was nominated for Best Picture still had a presence in the awards, save for maybe Maestro and maybe Past Lives. Even the ones that didn't win anything, like Killers of the Flower Moon, I think still had their presence in the show to where if you're going to watch this Oscar ceremony 20 years from now, this is a great look at just the landscape of film of that year. And so many years have gone by where films have gotten nothing. I mean, last year, Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Fablemans, Tar, they got nothing. The year before, I mean, famously, The Irishman lost like all of its awards. And I think it's sad because then when we look back at these Oscars, it doesn't feel like they were even competitive. Whereas here, because you have these great musical performances, it almost kind of, that is the award for Barbie and Killers of the Flower Moon, is getting to have these really great showcases of what makes their movies special. So the musical performances really are what made this show for me. There were some great speeches. I don't think any of the speeches were like all timer, like, oh my God, like that's going to be recited years and years and years from now. Of course, Davine Joy Randolph's her speech was very emotional. It kicked off the night in a very emotional note. Very happy for her, especially Paul Giamatti. First off, escorting her up the stairs, which just warmed my heart, and then crying after the speech. I mean, that was really sweet. Robert Downey Jr. had some great words too. He added his comedic flair, his kind of sarcastic Chandler Bing like comedy, but he did it in a way that was still endearing and still meaningful. And then, of course, Cillian Murphy, very humble guy, so he wasn't going to go for the frills with his speech. He was just very kind of matter of fact in what he was saying, but he was very emotional, which was really nice to see. And then Emma Stone, who was completely surprised. She didn't think she was going to win. I don't think many people by the time of the Oscars thought she was going to win. As the Oscars were going on, though, and I saw Poor Things pick up costumes, production design, and makeup back to back to back, the makeup one is really what convinced me that Emma Stone was going to win by the end of the show. I was like, I think the tide is going Poor Things' way, also because momentum. And we'll talk about the awards I got wrong in a sec, because I do want to talk about that and what that means for stats going forward in the future. But I mean, Emma Stone still gave a great speech, and she shouted out all the nominees, especially Lily Gladstone. She gave her the spotlight, which is great. I love to see the commemorative effort in this show, and none of the speeches were really ones, like I said, that I'm gonna like rewatch over and over again in the future, like some other speeches in some other years I do. But they all had something very nice and meaningful to say. My two favorite speeches of the night actually came from Cord Jefferson for American Fiction when he won adapted screenplay, and he talked about the budgets in Hollywood and giving more smaller projects their due. And he said, instead of making one $200 million movie, make 10, $20 million movies. And I really appreciated that, especially coming off the strike, like how to make this business thrive and how to give people who deserve to hear their voices, have their voices heard, give them that spotlight. I thought it was a really great speech for a film that I thought was good, but I didn't think the screenplay should have won. I was glad to see, though, that even though I was not necessarily a fan of that screenplay beating Poor Things and Oppenheimer, I still thought the speech was so good that I was glad Cord Jefferson was on that stage. And to see, a black writer win for his first, Academy Award nominated screenplay, like it was a really special moment. And then my other favorite speech was the 20 Days of Mariupol speech, because it was just so rooted in anger and honesty. I mean, the fact that the guy who made the film said he wishes he never made the film. He said he would trade this Oscar for no war at all. And I totally agree. I think, the fact that he had to make this film is a terrible thing, but the fact that he's getting awarded for it to give that platform to make that speech was really special. Like I thought his speech like floored me. But yeah, it was just a really solid night. The pace went along. I think if there's a few downfalls, like a few, I don't even want to say downfalls, but a few you know, kind of not so great moments. I think the In Memoriam, while it's always amazing to award those who um, passed and kind of honor their memory, and I think having the Bocelli father and son duo sing "Time to Say Goodbye" was absolutely stunning. I do like the idea of having dancers as part of the In Memoriam. The problem is when we at home are not in the theater and the names are shown on a screen, but because they're zoomed out to show us all the dancers and singers, we can barely read the names and we can barely hear the tributes and see the tributes on the screen. They were going by a little fast, and then the camera kept cutting and they kept kind of showing the names and faces in different places around the theater. I think if you're in the theater, that is a much more impactful moment and a much more easier to follow moment. But at home, I don't think it worked for the televised broadcast as much as I thought they thought it did. And I would have liked to see maybe they, show the names and then cut away to the dancers and have the dancers dance a little bit and then cut back to the names and then cut back to the dancers, because I think when you were doing it simultaneously, like I wanted to watch the dancers because I want to respect that art and watch the dancers, but I also want to see the names going by, to where I felt like it was trying to show us two things. It's almost like you can't watch two movies at once. Even if you have two laptops open, it's like you got to pay more attention to one or the other. You can't multitask. Maybe some people can. But I thought the In Memoriam was a weak spot, even though I thought it was a beautiful sentiment. Obviously, it always is. And the names included obviously made me emotional. But another thing, Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel's hit or miss. I thought he did a good job this time. I thought he was solid. I think he does a good job in just trying to keep the show going along, not really caring too much, which I think is important for an Oscars host. You need to move the show along, but you don't need to be the star of the show. And he doesn't want to be the star of the show. He just kind of wants to like get his piece in, occasionally pop in and out and keep the show moving along. And I think the big attribute for the show moving along as well as it did was because Jimmy Kimmel kept it at a good pace. You know, he kept the humor going. If a joke didn't land, he just kind of moved on to the next one. There was one joke that I thought was a little in poor taste, and that was the Robert Downey Jr. joke about, this is the highest point in your career. And then he kind of took it back and said, well, maybe the second highest, obviously alluding to Robert Downey Jr.'s drug past, which I thought was it was a little distasteful. I mean, this is Robert Downey Jr.'s big night. He doesn't really need to be reminded of his demons, I don't think. Even if it's, if you're going to make a joke at someone's expense for someone's traumatic past, I guess Robert Downey Jr. is the one who can be the best sport about it because Robert Downey Jr. has an amazing ability to kind of deflect and kind of just brush it off and make a joke about it. And then he kind of doubled down when Robert Downey Jr. did this thing. Jimmy Kimmel said again, he's like, is that because of the drugs? Like, okay, like I thought that one joke didn't sit well with me, and it kind of like soured the rest of that opening monologue. But throughout the show, I think Jimmy Kimmel had some good bits. I think the John Cena bit in particular was hilarious, not just because it was a callback to a famous Oscar moment with the streaker, not because John Cena is just a great comedian and we all forget that he's a legitimately great comedian, but also because it led to the costume design award, which I thought was just such a funny way to transition into costume design because you have this guy coming out naked and he's like, I can't open the envelope. And then he's like, leans in the mic, he says costume design. And it's just a perfect comedic timing. I mean, I thought that bit was really well timed and just so funny. And it didn't go on too long. It went the perfect amount of length. Whereas some jokes, like I think the Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer bit, of whether they meant Chippendale or Chippendales. I don't think that landed very well, but at least they're trying. At least they're trying to make funny, memorable moments. And like I said, having those presenters for the acting categories present and give their speeches. We had a little funny flub where Tim Robbins accidentally said Oscar winning to Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro, Robert De Niro is the most funny person to watch in the crowd because he always looks like he's very either uncomfortable or unenthused. But he's one of the nicest guys, so like I know he's happy to be there and proud. He's just probably really humble. But I don't think Robert De Niro laughed once until Tim Robbins made that flub. So hey, I give Tim Robbins the credit for kind of loosening up Robert De Niro there. But Robert De Niro is one of our greatest living actors, so he has a free pass. But as for the winners, I want to talk really quickly about the 5 categories I got wrong because I went 18 for 23. I correctly predicted that Poor Things would get both production design and costume, which I was very proud of. I picked all 3 shorts correctly, which I was very, very proud of. And I think some of the harder categories to call were eventually the ones that I got wrong, which was predicted. I mean, I said sound could very well go to zone of interest. I did end up going Oppenheimer just because of the editing stat, because you don't win best sound if you don't have an editing nomination. Zone of interest broke that history there. And zone of interest, I want to talk about it real quick. The sound nomination and win for zone of interest, the nomination alone was very inspired, but the win, zone of interest winning the best sound award is one of the most awesome awards I've ever seen because Oppenheimer is all about a bomb and it's about sound. Like it literally has this very centerpiece sound moment in the film. And I just thought it would be such an easy thing for the Academy to check off. But the fact that the Academy really wanted to honor the art of sound and use of sound in film, use of sound as a horror in film, I think is just so cool. And the fact that it won Best Sound Zone of Interest is such a cool thing. I didn't predict it because ultimately I backed off. But this is one that the BAFTAs did call, and I should have listened to the BAFTAs there. Another one that I should have listened to the BAFTAs for was makeup and hairstyling, which went to Poor Things. I went with the Makeup Guild. I thought Maestro was more the Academy's cup of tea than it was other BAFTA Critics' Choice cup of teas. So I went with Maestro, but it ended up going to Poor Things. And I think that just shows that sometimes films just have more momentum. I mean, look at Poor Things in costume design, production design. I think Poor Things had more momentum than Barbie. That's ultimately why it won. I think that's why Emma Stone won too. I think Poor Things, despite Lily Gladstone having the history making, story behind her and having, a great performance and a great subdued performance, I think Poor Things was just the hotter film. And we saw this with All Quiet on the Western Front last year, where it kept winning award after award after award for where people were like, is it going to win Best Picture? Because I think it just kind of caught on hot and late. And I think Poor Things was that film that if any film was going to beat Oppenheimer or going to be number 2, I bet it was Poor Things. I would bet $100 on it right now. So I should have thought that Poor Things was gonna pick up more than it did, than I predicted it to. I predicted it to win 2 awards, but should have predicted to win 3 or 4, which it did. It won 4 awards, and that brings us to Best Actress, where I didn't know going into the night what was gonna happen. I went with SAG because SAG was the last thing to happen, but voting started before SAG even aired. So there's a chance that all the people who voted before SAG voted Emma Stone, then all the people who watched after SAG either switched to Lily Gladstone or stuck with Stone. So it's really interesting to look back at it. And that's another thing that the BAFTA got right. So BAFTA predicted Poor Things in Makeup, Zone of Interest in Sound, Emma Stone and Actress. You know what they also predicted? Boy in the Heron for animated film. And that's another one I got wrong because I just thought the Oscars tend to go with the more populist pick if it's a deadlock like it is. And I kept saying to myself, I was like, why would I bet against the stat? No film has ever won Globes and BAFTA for animated film and lost the Oscar. And what won Globes and BAFTA? Boy and the Heron. So I should have just gone with Boy and the Heron. I don't know why I didn't. I think I honestly didn't because I thought just Spider-Man was a more accessible film, and because Miyazaki isn't technically retiring, I thought it wouldn't matter in the narrative. But I'm very happy for Boy and the Heron. I would have loved to see a speech, but obviously, you can't help that if they can't go to the ceremony. But I thought it was a really cool win. It shows that they're not just going to go for the more popular picks. It shows that it's also not rigged because they went with something that didn't have the people in attendance to make the speech, where Spider-Man, all of their creators were in the audience. So it was another inspired win, but also another one that BAFTA correctly predicted. I mean, last year BAFTA couldn't be more off base. I think BAFTA went like 7 for 23 or whatever. This year they went like 23 for 23. BAFTA went exactly as the Oscars did. Obviously, BAFTA doesn't have all the short films and all that stuff, but all the big awards BAFTA correctly predicted, including production design for Poor Things, including costume design for Poor Things, including sound, including makeup, including animated. And I was genuinely surprised by it. The one thing that BAFTA didn't predict, and this is just because no one predicted it because there was no precursor for it, was Godzilla for visual effects. Now, a lot of people out there were predicting Godzilla for visual effects solely out of the passion because of all the films in this category, Godzilla had the most story behind it, the most passion, the fact that it was a, smaller group of visual effects artists and they were getting less money and they were underworked and overpaid, underworked and underpaid. The story behind it, wanting to champion this and give Japanese cinema and international cinema more resources to have better, more well-functioning visual effects departments in the future. That was such a compelling story, but ultimately I went against it because of the stats, just because Godzilla Minus One didn't have any precursors. So how could I have gone with it in confidence? But I should have just gone with it in confidence because of the passion. And sometimes you have to throw all stats out the window and just think about passion. And Godzilla had the passion that the creator just didn't have. Even though the creator was nominated in 2 categories, even though the creator won the Visual Effects Society Award. So it was a valid reasoning to predict the creator, but ultimately it went to Godzilla, which was really, really fun. So I think the lessons we've learned today is that if there is a film that is not necessarily competing in a lot of awards, but has this kind of passionate fan base around it, like Godzilla Minus One, sometimes that's just going to win out, especially if you don't have Best Picture nominees in the category. Another thing to look out for in the future is BAFTA predicting animated, because I think animated, I went the other way and I should have stuck with BAFTA instead of the other stuff there. And another thing is the makeup actor combo. I mean, how many times have I been wrong on actor but been right with makeup, or vice versa? I mean, The Whale got best makeup, and then best actor went to Brendan Fraser. Best makeup went to Darkest Hour. Then it went to Gary Oldman. Best makeup went to Isaac Tammy Faye. Best actress went to Jessica Chastain. And here again, best makeup went to Poor Things. Best actress went to Emma Stone. I think in the future, I'm just gonna automatically predict whoever is winning in an acting category or a makeup category, just make them one of the same. Because at this point, makeup and actor or makeup and actress go hand in hand. And honestly, I should have thought that Bradley Cooper didn't have a shot at winning, so I don't think Maestro had a shot at winning. I should have thought that, but I just didn't think that because I thought this would be a different year. So those are the things I'm keeping in mind for the future. But I'm glad I got as many as I got correct. And I'm glad that the ones I got correct are all award winners that I'm happy won their awards. There's no film here that I'm looking at that I'm like, oh, that one, except for maybe War is Over. But even then, it was cool to see John and Yoko's son give a speech. So it's like one of those things where I'm not mad about any of these winners. I think all these winners are deserved in some way, shape, or form. I think they're all strong winners. I think they're all deserving people. I mean, Jennifer Lame finally got her first Oscar. Hoyt van Hoytema got his first Oscar. Ludwig Göransson got his second Oscar after Black Panther for scoring Oppenheimer. But I just think it's so exciting. It was so exciting. And it wasn't a film dominating in the way that it felt like Everything Everywhere All at Once was dominating, because so many films didn't get any last year. Like Banshees got nothing, Tar got nothing, Fableman's got nothing. Here, there was still enough wealth spread to where the only Best Picture nominees that didn't get any awards were Past Lives, Maestro, and Killers of the Flower Moon. So that's 3 out of 10. Everything else got recognition somewhere. Anatomy of a Fall got screenplay, American Fiction got screenplay, Barbie got song, Poor Things got 4 awards, Holdovers got supporting actress, Zone of Interest got sound and international, Oppenheimer picked up the rest. But I think even though Oppenheimer got a lot of awards, I don't think it was a totally dominant Oppenheimer night where everyone was like, oh, Oppenheimer again, Oppenheimer again, Oppenheimer again, because there was so much Barbie with the music, and there was also that big Killers of the Flower Moon performance, and then Poor Things winning 4 awards in a row or whatever. So I think they did a good job in making it not feel like the Oppenheimer night and really giving its due to all the films. So it was a great Oscars. I was very happy, and I'm happy to go 18 for 23. But that is where I'll end this video for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts for the Oscars, did you like it as much as me? Did you dislike it? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching. We got some exciting stuff coming up. Now that the Oscars are over, I am going to transition into my March Madness mode starting today. On Monday, I will be posting the first 2 polls for my March Madness bracket that I'm doing for directors. The winner of the March Madness bracket, I will cover their whole filmography on the channel and do a deep dive ranking of their filmography. So please go vote in the Facebook page of DYL PICKLE Movie Network to vote for the first 2 of those. There will be 2 polls a day, which will be on for 24 hours, and then the winner will be decided out of those. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned later today. You'll be seeing the title rematch of Stacy and Jake for the Marvel Trivia League. And later on in the month, you will see my Picture This episode with Chad, where we cover all 10 Best Picture nominees. And later in the month, you will also see, in honor of St. Patrick's Day, Matt Chapman and I on FrameRec cover every single Leprechaun movie in a March Madness style bracket. So it's an exciting time in March for the channel. And of course, in April, we are going to be doing our subathon, which you will have to stay tuned for. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.